in-depth analysis of national current affairs.
Freshly
Freshly
pressed.
pressed on Smooth 98.1.
We all about it.
Consolidated Hallmark Insurance. Anxiety away. Value assured.
And it's time to bring you freshly pressed 981, the big stories making the rounds in Nigeria at the moment with detailed analysis just for you. This is time for you to be part of the show. Hey, we'll tell you how to be part of the conversation this morning in just a moment. I'm with Shokbe Martins.
Thank you so much, Pepple. There you go. So yes, and for the next half hour, that's Pepple and myself, Shepard Martins, are with Mr. C as he takes us through what is going on news on the national front. Do remember you can use the hashtag freshlypressed981 on Twitter. Go over to youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos to watch the live stream and leave your messages there as well. And send WhatsApp messages in to 0809 4440981. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, guys. Good morning, Lagos.
I love how you say it. It's always the pause of the Lagos. All right. So we've got a bunch of stories for you today, and should we get dug in? Let's get started.
All right, let's start down with Premium Times newspaper. Senate moves to stop payment of ransom to kidnappers. Just a peep into the story. The Senate has amended the Terrorism Prevention Act 2013. Now, the amendment seeks to outlaw the payment of ransom to abductors, kidnappers, and terrorists for the release of any person who has been wrongfully confined, imprisoned, or kidnapped. Mr. C, the caveat here wrongfully confined, imprisoned, or kidnapped. When you saw this story, what crossed your mind?
Okay, thank you, Victor. So, the first thing I must point out about this story is the headline is designed deliberately to capture a certain part of what was actually done. Now, yes, it is true that the Senate has prohibited the payment of ransom, but that's not the main reason for the amendment of the Terrorism Act. Now, the act was amended because there were noted deficiencies within the provisions of the existing act, and Nigeria had been placed on a watch list by the Financial Action Task Force. And if we hadn't taken these steps, sanctions would have been effected against Nigeria. Now, the amendments are designed to ensure that the anonymity and privacy of certain transactions, especially in the financial space, are brought to an end, and that every financial transaction can be properly identified. And what we've noticed in the Nigerian space is some financial transactions are still evading the dragnet of the law enforcement authorities. Now, to the headline, they say that it is designed to prevent the continuing incidents of kidnappings and abductions. Now, I have a challenge with that position. If you prohibit the payment of ransom and you say that the victims cannot pay, the loved ones should not pay ransoms, is the state in a position to safely deliver those who've been abducted, those who've been kidnapped, back to their loved ones? In the United States, in Israel, in the UK, the official policy is we don't negotiate with terrorists, we don't negotiate with kidnappers or abductors. They may police a staged ransom drop to get the perpetrators of the criminal act in Nigeria back home, bringing us back to our collective reality. That is not the case. And a very recent example is a train incident in Kaduna. Unfortunately and sadly, as we speak right now, there are still people who were kidnapped and abducted on that train
You know what, Mr. C, let's actually bring that story up because we do have one about that from the Punch newspaper. The headline reading Kaduna train attack, we're ready to negotiate with terrorists, say victims' families. Now, I would love to get your take on this in line with what we've already been discussing. Now, we hear from the families of the kidnapped victims of the train attack in an interview with the Punch saying that they're willing to discuss with the terrorists if that remains the only option to see their loved ones released unhurt because and they say that they have not, the federal government has not been talking with the terrorists. So it's now left to, they cannot talk with the terrorists. The terrorists have said that they only want to speak with the government. So now, what would you say to that?
Okay, Shakwe, thank you. So, first of all, I must point out the punishment that has been imposed for paying ransom. It's 15 years in prison. How did we get here?
How, so is that not a case of criminalizing victimhood at this point?
Yes, it is. And we discussed this downstairs. It's a very interesting move that I find difficult to understand. Now, in one breath, you say don't pay the ransoms. In another breath, you appear to be doing next to nothing about getting them back. Now, you have relatives of these abducted people saying that they haven't heard from the abductors. The abductors insist they want to talk to the government. Now, is the government talking to them? We have no idea. We can't say with any certainty. We can't confirm or deny the position. Now, let's not forget this is pre election season. We're entering the month of May. In the month of May, all the primaries are going to be conducted. So let's not fool ourselves. Who is going to be talking to the criminal groups? Who? The people who are contesting for office or the people who are going to come in from another country?
And so, another question that I want to bring up, still in line with what we're talking about, is the issue of communication, right? Because if we're looking at this whole criminalization of paying of ransom, we have seen from history, previous events, and this event as well, where apart from the whole we will fish out the perpetrators of this act, we don't really get a lot of communication from the relevant authorities, security agencies and government authorities as well. So doesn't that leave a lacuna for non-state actors to then come in and tell the story that we should be hearing from the central authority?
I agree. I agree completely. Now, it's not that we don't know how to communicate. Our people communicate on the most relevant issues. Then, on the issues that really matter, they're quiet, extremely quiet. Now, you cannot, you can't deal with non-state actors. You can't flush them out. You can't even negotiate with them. What exactly is going on? And then to suggest that, how do you even prove that anyone paid a ransom? Because let's not fool ourselves. When anyone is told to bring a ransom, nobody's asking you to do a bank transfer. Nobody's asking you to bring a check or a bank draft. It's cash. So how do you prove, one, that someone paid a ransom? Two, why would you want to jail someone for legitimately trying to secure the release of his loved one when the state that is charged with doing that is unable to or has abdicated that responsibility?
We will leave that for you to discuss
Well,
up on WhatsApp, up on YouTube, and up on Twitter as well.
messages are already coming in. Ken has this one, says it's as if this government wants to monopolize ransom payment. And Tayo from Aja.
Says, let's ban ransom while our loved ones are in the arms of kidnappers and the government is leaving people to deal with them by themselves. Can we legislate against bad and poor governance? That's the question.
How do we do that? I mean, the same legislators are the ones who are telling us that, oh, they're going to ban people from paying for release of their loved ones.
Now, Tajuddin from Isolo, I think it is, says, the ransom payment, I have no iota of doubt that these lawmakers, he goes on to talk about something that the NDLEA has brought up yesterday. He says kidnappers are heroes while the kidnapped and their loved ones are criminals. That can only happen in Nigeria.
Let's go now to the third story here. Zamfara government deposes Emma's district heads over links with bandits. Now, Zamfara state government has deposed the emir of Zumi, Tatiku Mohamadu, and the emir of Dansadao, Husseini Umar, over the alleged link with bandits. Now, the government also sacked the district head of Birin Saba, Suleiman Ibrahim, for same alleged offenses. Mr. C.
Okay, so this is a very interesting story, and I'll explain why. in one breath, the Zamfara state government has seemingly identified first class traditional rulers who collaborate with terrorists in whatever form or guise, along with district heads. The Zamfara state government has deposed them. Fair enough, kudos to them. But does it stop there? Now, you identified that they have links with these terrorists. Are you planning to prosecute them? Because further down the story, they were taken to court, they were arraigned in court, but the judge refused to read out the charge. No, it's very strange. Don't worry. So he refused to read out the charge and advised the state government to redraft the charges. Now, when we identify people who collaborate actively and voluntarily with terrorists, what do we do with them? It's a slap on the wrist to merely depose them. They're going to continue those criminal activities. And now they have added incentive. They've been deposed. Are we mining them for intelligence, for information? Okay, who are these terrorists you link up with? Where are they based? How are they supplied? How do you communicate with them? What is the strength of the camps they operate from? Are we trying to get all these details? Because if the worst sanction is you'll be deposed or you'll be given a slap on the wrist and you proceed, we're never going to win the war on terrorism this way. An example must be set, a very strong and clear example, that if you willingly collaborate with terrorists, you will be severely prosecuted and you will serve the time. That is the only way you can boost the morale of the Nigerian troops who have been sent to fight these guys. Because the Nigerian army is watching. You've deposed them and that's that. And then tomorrow you tell them, go and fight these guys. And like, what's the point?
Exactly.
They're also watching the distribution of 260 luxury cars,
Now, this was, funny enough, you mentioned this.
including 17 Cadillac Escalades.
So this was done before these guys were deposed. So a trick question. Did these guys collect the gifts?
Let's move on. Yes, please.
Let's do that. Mr. C, you have a function for asking those tough questions and just leave silence. But let's take a look at this next article hold on one second, here we go. From the Premium Times, Nigerian government mulls creation of new Ministry of Defense. And I have to say, Mr. C, this particular article has left me a little confused because now I'm not sure. So we heard from the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Defense, Ibrahim Kana, who said that the federal government had concluded plans to create a brand new Ministry of Defense with a view to repositioning the sector. And I'm going to quote him now. He says, one of the important aspects of the reform, which I have to state here, is the creation of a new Ministry of Defense, which will be like the Pentagon in the USA. If you enter the Pentagon, you see a mixture of military and civilians working together, and that is going to be the nature of our new Ministry of Defense. He was talking obviously about his mandates to kind of bring different security agencies together, have them working in tandem as opposed to separately. But on this new Ministry of Defense,
Okay, so the headline can be misleading. Right?
Okay.
Because an interpretation of the headline will mean that a separate Ministry of Defense will be created, but no. Actually, what they're trying to say is the existing Ministry of Defense will be repositioned.
see, that's what we thought. But then just looking at what he says, he keeps on talking about the new Ministry of Defense. There's a lot of words about reforms, but really, I'm still not sure. I will not lie to you.
So his understanding is after the Ministry of Defense is repositioned, it's going to be a new form, a new shape, a new outlook. And they're using the Pentagon as their reference point. I have no issues with that. Beyond copying a model from a foreign country, you must remember that the Pentagon is successful because there are certain local conditions that make it successful. Nigeria is a completely different country. Now, it's no secret that in Nigeria, the various security agencies from time to time have turf wars and do not actively collaborate. How are they going to get that sorted out? Because the message has to come from the top down that, look, we're all together, it's one fight. And until they can get the senior guys, the senior brass heads into a room and agree that going forward, you have to actively collaborate with each other. And this should be signed off by the commander in chief. So it's all well and good copying it. I hope they can even copy it properly. And then, so it's one thing to copy, it's another thing to implement. Will this be done?
You know, we like to pick and choose in this country, but let's see how all of that goes. We need to take a break now. When we do come back, we'll be looking at the Electoral Act. Some commissioners have resigned, but no minister has sent in a resignation yet. We'll look at that and your messages on the WhatsApp platform. Stay with us.
Ms. Amaray, and you're listening to Smooth 98.1. Don't go anywhere.
D from Alausa says, excellent analysis as usual, Mr. C.
Sorry?
I said D from Alausa says, excellent analysis as usual, Mr. C.
Gracias. I agree that this guy, they're being hypocritical. But he didn't try to show that it's a different matter. No, because he has 4 kids, 3 guys and a girl. So what exactly is he looking for? Do you understand? And then the new wife or the baby mama has 2 kids from a previous arrangement. So it's
Can you imagine?
so he only married this girl because it was going to come out on Instagram. There's this notorious guy on Instagram called Just Lover. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh, yeah.
But everybody's afraid of that guy.
How he gets this to
On Twitter, someone complained to Sterling Bank about some issue.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to Freshly Pressed 981 on Smooth 98.1. You can be part of the conversation simply by sending a WhatsApp message to us on 0809 4440981. And we have quite a number of messages coming in at this time.
All right, this one in from D from Alausa saying, excellent analysis from Mr. C as usual. Whilst Timmy Tokpa says, was a top government official abducted at the Kaduna train hijack? And he was released as well. So the kidnappers just singled him out for release without ransom payment. Who is fooling who?
No, 100 million naira ransom was paid.
When these top government officials' loved ones are kidnapped, ransom is paid for their release. All of that said in capital letters and paid with the speed of light too.
That's the Mitobe in Lekki. Nick sent a message from a papa. I feel so bad, depressed, weak, and angry at this news about the law ransom payments to kidnappers. How can a government be this wicked and insensitive? You abdicate your responsibility of protecting lives and property to the citizens, yet want to punish same citizens for trying to help themselves. Well, just as Mr. C said, how can you even prove that a ransom has been paid when it's even done in cash? I feel so bad for my country.
Leke says, the deposed Haraba emirs and others are often left on their own without ready security aids. They always claim being abandoned by the army. Whilst JJ says, Mr. C, mining them for information? Well, let's see. But I think that is rocket science for them to think that far. Something is going on that is making it seem like this war can't be won. Collaborate with civilians. Nigeria has a record of copying upside down and not interpreting it to fit its reality. Do we even know our reality? Nigeria, my country.
And tie in again with this one. Government always with the new mode, but abandoning the issues that didn't make it work. It's like buying a new car and forgetting to fix the road. I like a new SUV, by the way. Okay.
And Oludari says, Pentagon call Pentagon me. He says it is not the same. Is it not the same Nigerian army and civil servants that will staff it, or are they importing expatriates? Yes, and that's an interesting one. Okay, we've got more stories headed your way.
All right. From the Punch newspaper now, Electoral Act. More commissioners resign as Buhari's ministers refuse. At least 13 commissioners have resigned their appointments in Sokoto State ahead of the primary elections in accordance with the Electoral Act, bringing the total number of commissioners that had resigned in order to contest elections to over 60 across the 36 states in Nigeria. But we're yet to see any minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria leave office. to, go contest, win or lose, whatever the outcome. Some of them are trying to be smart, Mr. C. I'll stay. If I win, fine, I leave. If I don't, I continue in office.
Yes, so Victor, you're very correct. And it's interesting to see the dichotomy between the federal and state appointees. At the state level, they're all resigning because they're being directed by the respective governors to resign. However, at the federal level, they haven't resigned, and we could say ostensibly it is because the commander in chief has not asked them to resign. However, they're basing their position on the Federal High Court judgment tearing down Section 84, subsection 12 of the Electoral Act. However, what they forget is the matter is on appeal. Now, if a court of appeal comes out with a judgment overturning the Federal High Court decision, it will be too late for them to now do the needful. Now, the APC as a party has now insisted that political appointees must resign before contesting. It's now part of the rules. And the argument, so a question would the APC provisions vis-a-vis the constitutional provisions. Now, under the Constitution, you resign 30 days before the election, not before the primary. However, the Constitution is also clear that, and decided law is also clear that for you to emerge as a candidate of a political party, you must follow the processes of that party. It's that simple. And if you do not follow the processes, then you are not eligible to present yourself as a candidate at the primaries, and you are not eligible to be voted or selected as a candidate for the general election. So they have to be very careful. And frankly speaking, it makes no difference. For some of them, they have no business under the sun contesting. You have the Minister of State for Education. ASU is on strike, and what is paramount on his mind is to contest. You have the Minister of Labor who says he's contesting. ASU is on strike. If the two gentlemen were given sheets of paper to write down their achievements over the past 7 years, I would be very interested to see if they actually write down anything. It's that bad.
Definitely write down feats of Napoleonic prowess.
So for me, it's neither here nor there. A lot of them have no business contesting. They will not get it.
The Minister of Transportation as well.
So the Minister of Transportation, they should obey the party guidelines and do the right thing. Resign.
They have 2 days. What if they do not resign? Because they're waiting on the SGF, because in the states, the secretary to government of the states are the ones who are giving the directive, asking them to resign. But at the federal level, they're waiting for the SGF. The SGF says he's not got an order from Mr. President, and Mr. President seems not to be saying anything. But let's move on to other stories.
All right, very quickly, from Punch newspaper, border reopening, clearing agents, not federal government, state closure disastrous. This coming after the federal government on Friday approved the second phase of the reopening of the remaining four land borders. Now, we heard from a member of the National Association of Government Approved Freight Forwarders, Shegun Musa, who said, and I quote, federal government has refused to tell us what they have achieved from the closure of the borders these years. If there has not been any achievement, then the closure was a disaster. What's your response to his statement?
I agree with Mr. Musa. So the question is, what exactly did we achieve with the border closures? Because during the period these borders were officially closed, we all know for free that goods were still being imported illegally through the same closed borders. During the same period, a number of businesses actually shut down because they could not continue to operate. Some businesses could not get their raw materials and had to relocate. They had to leave Nigeria. So what did we get out of all of this? So it's not enough to just quietly reopen the borders. The objective for which they were closed, was it achieved in full? Was it achieved in part? Nigerians deserve to know. But with all things Nigerian, and this is a problem that cuts across almost all the administrations, they don't feel very accountable to the Nigerian people.
Well,
so we're probably never going to find out if it was effective or not.
All right, let's look through some messages on the WhatsApp portal. Well, from Oyekon says they don't want to resign as ministers, but still want to contest in elections. Lack of sacrifice, have your cake and eat it at the same time.
Whilst Emeka from Ikeja says the amendment is a variance of the Constitution, which stipulates 30 days to election is what is required. Mr. C, the federal Constitution is superior to any party constitution. The court judgment subsists until set aside.
The Constitution cannot regulate how parties select their candidates. So it's instructed to know that there's no provision in the Constitution that states how candidates should be selected. The Constitution leaves that to the parties. So to say that the Constitution is supreme is misleading and completely misses the point.
All right, and very quickly, let's take a look at this article in from the Punch newspaper. 2023, doctors back NDLEA on drug test. NBA demands legal backing. So what do you say to this news of the Nigerian Medical Association backing the NDLEA, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, in its call for political parties to make drug integrity tests part of the screening requirements for aspirants seeking to contest political offices in the 2023 general election?
Okay, so we understand the mischief the NDLEA is trying to cure by recommending strongly that candidates of political parties be subjected to drug tests. And it's clear why they're making the suggestion. However, it must be pointed out that under existing Nigerian law, drug testing is not compulsory, it's not mandatory for political aspirants. You will need to change the existing law to get this implemented. Now, under the Nigerian Constitution, being drug clean is not a requirement to be fit for office. And being a drug user is not explicitly a reason to be kicked out of office. Even though there's a general omnibus provision that says if you exhibit behavior that is inconsistent with the office. But we understand what the NDLEA is trying to cure, and we've had reports where some politicians have engaged in recreational drug use. But beyond this, beyond the drug test, I think we've gotten to a point where our aspirants need to undergo psychiatric tests. Let's be sure of the people who are coming in. Let's be sure of their mental state of mind. Let's be sure of their physical condition. Let's be sure that we're bringing in people that are fit physically and medically and mentally.
From our past history of presidents and governors who have spent what feels like more days out of the country undergoing medical treatments than in their positions.
Then apart from that, in the past, we've had Nigerian governments take decisions that we cannot reconcile with common sense or logic. And it's important that we get people in who are not divorced or separated from reality.
We need to go now. We must thank you, Mr. C, for being a part of the conversation today. Let's keep the conversation going on social media. On Twitter, it's at Smooth981FM. You can also find Mr. C on social media at Monsieur C with a triple E. Thank you very much. We'll do this again tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Good morning.
Dated Hallmark Insurance. Anxiety away.
This is
value
1 minute.
assured.
Do we still have the... Yes, we do.